Hello and welcome to the Established Self-Love Summit. I'm Tricia, Reid, your host. The Established Self-Love Summit is an open dialogue presenting ideas on the exploration and nurturing of self-love and all the ways we could be blocking the love we all so inherently crave. I look forward to exploring this with you further. Today's guest is Reid Lightheart. So Reid, tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now, and then we're going to just work our way back because you have a lot going on.
Sure. I mean, I think always in the background of everything is a form of consciousness evolution, spiritual evolution, aka some people would call that personal development. Because actually, I think personal development is probably a foundational step, and then eventually you kind of graduate into recognizing that it's maybe consciousness development or spiritual development. It's just not maybe hip to talk about it that way at certain, especially if you're hard charging, testosterone fueled A-type executive types. So you don't want to get into the woo-woo. We're into self-development, personal development, So, but I think that's always been a drive of mine since very long. I've been fascinated with growth, and I've been fascinated with self-development, and I've been a student of Eastern philosophy and Western economics, and I think both of those things actually confuse together to kind of create what I would say is consciously aware. And that's a terrible word. I hate that word. Sucks. It's so
Okay, what's a better word?
Let's erase that. I think what it would be, mission motivated companies where you are looking to enhance the lives of other people through offering them products, services, or technology that helps them cultivate wellness in their life, whether that's physical, whether that's mental, whether it's spiritual, whether it's economic, because they're all correlated on some side. I mean, the very fact that we could even have a conversation like this is largely in part because of the economic positivity that's been created on such a grand mass scale inside of, say, the industrialized democracies of the world. If you're outside one of those and you're born into a country in some totalitarian dictatorship where somebody's putting a machine gun in your hand at 10 or mutilating your genitals when you're at birth or all this sort of stuff, well, guess what? You're looking to survive every day. You don't even enter into this conversation. So this is, we have to recognize the background of even the fact to have a conversation about it is a wealth. So we're already stewarding an incredible amount of karma. But then how do we take that, the dysfunctional aspects or the unfair, equitable aspects of that model without blowing up the whole system under some, ideology that's fallacious? And so balancing the good of the all with self-development, with creating prosperity for your life, which is enhancing other people's lives, is kind of an ongoing evolutionary component. I don't get it all right all the time, but that's been my passion and my pursuit for many, many years.
I love it. And out of that, you've created quite a few things, 2 books, right? And you've
technically it'd be about 8, but I've only known her for a while. Yeah. So,
okay. No.
Once you write a book, you got to write another one, right?
Okay.
Like that's the problem with books. They're dated when they're done. They're and there's stuff in there that you're going to regret putting because you find out later it doesn't work.
Okay.
And so they're incomplete because there's another aspect that, at least, so if you get into the book writing program, I'd be forewarned, it's its own drug deal, because then you got to write another one, and that's why all these authors keep writing books, because they're trying to share what they learned or overcome what they didn't tell you in the last book.
Okay, so then what's a solid for you? You have your nutrition stuff going on, and then So
I'm co-founder of a company called BiOptimizers.
Yes.
With Matt Galanity. I think he's been interviewed with you before.
Yeah.
And him and I have been friends for 20 years, 25 years, long time. And so we built a company based on those principles, to end physical suffering and to activate what we call awesome health, or biologically optimized health. And we do that in the best way that we know possible. And then I have another education company called the Prosperity and Health Alliance, where I teach people how to cultivate the practices and principles and mindset that allows them to build a home-based business because if you look at the principles of what one of my mentors was, which was Mahatma Gandhi in India, most people talk about the peaceful revolution about that he spoke about, which I think is very relevant in today's world. There was that part of it, and most people look at that part and focus on that part. But if you look at the Indian flag, on the center of the Indian flag is the spinning wheel. And the spinning wheel was symbolic of the individual person, the individual person at home, taking ownership of their economics by producing more than they consume via the spinning wheel, which was the simplest format to galvanize the 700 million Indians at the time to overcome colonization of the British Empire. And so what was really profound about that movement, and it had 2 points: that you can be as peaceful as you want, you can have as much of that, love and hugs and, sweetness and all that sort of stuff. But I see a lot of people who are in that condemn the economic side of it in order to get those messages out. And if you look at Mother Teresa, if you look at Mahatma Gandhi, if you look at Tony Robbins today, those type of people who create a massive amount of value for other people in the world, these are economic giants of about the amount of money they bring into those systems and distribute it for the causes and the purposes of evolution, which allow people to build, I think, a certain sense of autonomy, that they are not just a cork bobbing in the ocean of waves and they're helpless and not able to overcome these things, but it brings the fundamentals of taking ownership of your life on all levels, and then step by step overcoming that and taking on more responsibility, because economics recognizes to responsibility. So I believe that if you are given wealth, and we are all given wealth,
Yes.
the fact that we're born in this country,
Exactly.
relative to the world and historical aspects, we're extraordinarily wealthy.
Yes.
For time and opportunity and structural systems. So there's a stewardship that's involved in that. And that is, how do you give back? How do you create a life that's not just all about take and all about me, which will always lead to unfulfillment and some level of self-loathing.
Mm-hmm.
When you align with the right principles, whether you're a billionaire or you got $2 in your bank account, then you have to recognize is that you're on the right track at that point. And the economics and the numbers, that's all one thing to keep score, but it's the principles behind that will lead you in the right direction and make you feel good.
Okay. So being generous with everything you're doing, with your intentions and what you're creating, that's what I hear that you're talking about being in alignment with what you're creating, what you're writing, what you're developing to teach others. And so that's a beautiful thing to be standing up and sharing with others. So what led you to want to do that?
Great question.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. When I was 15 years old, 3 things happened to me that were pretty life-changing. And number one, my parents moved from the small village that they lived in Canada to a non-village. In other words, it was 5 miles to my nearest neighbor up a dirt road, living on a top of a mountain. And they were the caretakers for a wealthy family. So they took care of this 500 square estate in the woods with the lake and all the log cabins and all that. So it's a beautiful place to come visit, but I certainly didn't want to be there at 15 years old, isolated from my friends, cut off from my community. It was horrible. It was the worst thing that ever happened. I was like, oh my God, I want to die. Okay. So I had that. So sudden change in my social structure of life. It was in 15 minutes to get to the road, an hour to get to the school. So I'm traveling 2.5 hours a day just to get to school and back. So I'm on this kind of cycle. Mm-hmm. That was impact number one. In hindsight, it gave me an incredible lot of time to sit and reflect and be an observer to life, because I was somewhat removed from things. So at an early age, I became kind of an observer of and thinker. Second thing that happened is my sister, who was 4 years my senior, she was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, which is a form of cancer, which is cancer of the lymph nodes. And I watched her go through the medical model over the next 4 years before she died at the early age of 22 of my first semester of university. So as tragic as that was, and I certainly wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I got an intimate experience of a couple key elements. Number one, your life is not a guarantee. It can be taken from you at any time. Number two, your health is not a guarantee. So even though she lived 4 years, a good portion of those years was in a severely compromised state where you were existing, but you were not really participating in life. That had a profound impact on me. It probably took me 10 years to even recognize why that drove me into the field of health and performance and all these sort of stuff, because I was left with the question, well, geez, the treatments look worse than the actual condition.
Yeah.
Another topic that's relative today. Next thing, the third thing, she gave me a bodybuilding magazine at the same time. So this all happened within a couple of months. And on the cover was this blonde guy with the name of I'm blonde here. I guess that's my COVID haircut here, because you can't get to a hair salon. So
I can teach you how to do a real easy haircut. It's fine.
Yeah, it's called razors and just make it bald. But I haven't quite made that. I'm losing my hair fast enough. I don't want to accelerate the process. If I cut it all off, maybe it won't come back. But anyways, we
just
talked
put a
about
hat
that
on.
earlier.
It's fine.
Yeah. So she gave me this bodybuilding. Had this picture of Troy Zucolato on the cover. He's a blonde guy. He was Mr. California at the time. He had these two pretty girls, and I was like, oh my God, driven mad with testosterone as every 15-year-old boy is. I was like, oh, well, maybe I need these muscles or something. I got to get it
to get the girls.
Yeah. So I got a job. I started working, bought a weight set, built a Rocky gym in my barn. And for the next 4 years, I became a card-carrying member of the crazy bodybuilding club, where I wanted to learn everything about it. And Arnold Schwarzenegger became my mentor through his books and through his videos and through his stuff. And he said 3 things that were really interesting. Because he said, and this was not a message I had heard. He said, if you have hard work, self-discipline, and a positive attitude, you can achieve anything. And here he was, larger than life. He was on the movies. He was on the covers. He had the girls. He had the money. He had the fame. He had all these things that are attractive to you as a 15-year-old, very impressionable. Yes. And given the fact that there were so many things that I couldn't control in my life, and I think a lot of people, when they're starting out or they're having trouble with self-love or recognition or anxiety about stuff or whatever it happens to be, a lot of it has to do, there's a sense of helplessness. There's a sense that they don't have hope, or they don't have control of their life, or that these other factors or these other people's, and that may be true on a lot of stuff, but it's really careful. You have to be really careful to not take on that victim role. Because if you take on that victim role, you don't have enough energy to get out to another state of consciousness where you will have the power to act on those forces that you can't act. So being frustrated, being angry, being, in this case of being mad at the world, my sister's dying, I'm taken away from my friends, I got nothing to do. I found solace in going out to that gym and lifting weights and seeing these tiny incremental changes in my own physique. And that was something I could control. And that was the start, I believe, of a journey in self-development and understanding setting goals and having to go through setbacks and stuff, but staying clear to that vision, which years later, about 16 years later, culminated in me actually competing and representing my country at the Mr. Universe contest, which was my dream come true. So I was not very good at bodybuilding. I didn't have a great background. I had terrible genetics. I didn't have the right environment. I didn't have nothing. I had no business. In fact, I competed for 10 years and never won once during that 10 years.
But you ended up winning twice, though, or was it 3 times?
Three times national, and went to the worlds and all that sort of stuff. And the one thing, I don't know if I was too stupid or too stubborn to quit. I don't know what it was. If I look back on it now, if someone came to me and said, I've been doing this for 10 years and haven't any success, I'd be like, oh, you might want to try something else.
Wait, how old were you though at the time? There's something to be said about that.
I started when I was 15 years old, and my first national championships and world championships was at 31 years old.
Okay. And so once you got to that, did you say, okay, I'm good, or did you keep going forward with it?
Well, I won a lot of winning at the end. Once I learned the principles of winning and the psychology of winning, then it was pretty easy for me to win. But once I got to the world championships, for those who haven't been to a true world championships or an Olympics or anything like that, okay, there's your state level or provincial level, which is a very high level. You know, there's your local level and you get state. Well, you're pretty good if you can do state. And then you go to the national championships. It's kind of like another level, like really, really hard to win a national championships in anything. And then when you graduate from that to the world, it's another jump, because everybody is great. Everybody's a winner. You're going against the best of the best
All
of
the
the
winners.
best.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the winners. So the variance within that could be time involved and genetics. And when you get to a certain point, you go, yeah, I don't think there's anything I could do to beat that guy. You know, like he's just, you know, it's like, you know, being center in the NBA was not an option for me. I'm not 7 feet tall. It's very much the same in a lot of sports. So you always want to go to see how far you can get, because that can parlay into other things. I do believe that when one door closes, another one opens. And for me, when that door closed in my that first contest, or that first world experience after the nationals, right after that, I started an online business with Matt.
Oh.
And so that door opened, and I started teaching the next generation of athletes and fitness, and trying to avoid some of the mistakes I made along the way. So that was the door that opened. And then, you know, so one thing leads to another, and then
Yes.
another and another. So I think it's important, though, you have to have enough faith. And that's why I believe in connecting with a higher power, whatever we call it, nature, universe, God, you know, whatever you call it whatever you want to represent, the totality of the infinite intelligence that obviously runs everything. Because either nothing's impressive or everything's a miracle. That's a choice that everybody gets to make. Like atheists, you can cut this reductionist theory. We evolved from amino acid structures that land. Okay, maybe we did.
Maybe.
I prefer to, hey, look, right now at this moment, you and I are flying through space at some ungodly speed, spinning around a giant nuclear reactor that is radiating, and the light, it takes like 7 minutes or something like that to get here. And I'm looking up at stars that the light is coming from like millions or billions of light years away. And we're at some insignificant galaxy of one of trillions of galaxies, and these little like bug-like humans that have all these problems here in the earth. You know what? We don't have problems.
No.
The only problem we have is that we don't recognize the miraculousness of everything that's going on. So I believe that everything's a miracle.
Are you in awe of everything that's happening right now?
Yeah, well, that's why
I'm in awe.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's amazing.
I have this program called the Awesome Health System, and it's like I'm in awe all the time. Like, and the second I lose that awe, I know I'm off track. The second I'm because it's really, you know, everybody has all kinds of stuff. Going back to self-love, everybody has, you know, they wish they were taller, they wish they were better looking, they wish they didn't have this pooch hanging out over their belt, right? They wish their sex organs were better or smarter, they wish that they had better breasts or smaller breasts, or they were smarter, or they had more money. There is always something to compare yourself to that can make yourself feel like crap.
Always. We can just pick something.
And this is the part that people, like, there's this ridiculous conversation, and excuse me, but it drives me crazy about equality in the world. And I believe that there is soul equality in the fact that every life is valuable and has meaning. But if you stand me next to Shaquille O'Neal, okay? He's 7 feet tall, he's 3 feet. We're not equal.
No.
He can't fit into some of the cars that I can. I can't slam dunk a basketball like him.
So you can't be mad. You just can't be mad.
So what happens when people are using these limited paradigms and are trying to work this balance of power to overcome some negative feeling that they have about their self or their group or their identity or whatever, you're instantly cast in a victim, because you're creating separation between there's an us and a them, and they owe us and we deserve this, and all this garbage that gets you spinning around in this emotional negative state that never gets resolved. And the fact that you're a human and I'm a human, we're spirit that is incarnated in this physical form. And I look at this thing and I go, Jesus, you know, like, you know, what's going on here,
You're
right?
just in your
Especially as
vessel.
you,
You're just in
yeah,
your vessel.
especially as you age, you're like, oh God, I feel kind of the same, but I look in the mirror, I don't know about
The Zoom
this,
has
right?
good filters. Do you like the filters? I
Yeah,
like the filters.
Zoom's got some sweet filters for sure. So, yeah, so you know what I mean? Like that's, to me, you have to get out of those conversations and get into the conversations that uplift you, that conversations that empower you, the conversations. And so for me, I started that journey at 15. I still had some negative hopes. That was a circuitous route to get on the story. But and then I went to university and I started into personal development and started doing some, you know, all sorts of uh, chemicals and things like that, and you know, experimenting with all
Well, you
different
can't
sorts
just
of things.
throw that in there because you did your bodybuilding championship without drugs. So when you start talking about
Correct.
chemicals, what
Yeah,
does that
yeah.
mean?
Oh, you know, the normal things, you start with booze and do a little pot,
Oh
and then
yeah,
you get into
got it.
you know, acid and
Yeah,
stuff. And then I had an
it just
overdose.
jumps right in.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
Then I had an overdose, and during that I died, and had the experience of seeing God, and in the infinite presence of divinity. Um, that presence didn't judge me. I judged myself within the presence of this infinite love, the foundation of the entire universe, is the fabric, the essence of everything. And then went through the life review. The life review was going through my experience of life, not what I did, but actually experiencing the feelings and things that I caused other people. And in that moment, I
whoa,
felt self-loathing. I really understood what self-loathing, because I was like, oh, I'm not a good person. So what
wow.
was interesting about the judgment experience that is often described in the religions, it was not an external authority judging me. I was judging my own experience, my own conscious experience, which was not connected to this physical realm. This is a
Mhm.
non-physical awareness of
Wow.
infinite, separated from the complete. But when becoming with the opportunity to get exposed to where the source was, I'm like, okay, we didn't get this quite right. Fortunately, long story short, I went through uh, multiple incarnations and saw all this sort of stuff, and then somehow ended up back in my life. And I was like, okay, I'm 22 years old. I'm back in my room. I feel like I'm billions of years old. This whole system is not working. And from that, set a quest, not just on an externalized cosmetic appeal, which was my bodybuilding career, but that was always an expression. It was kind of, for me, and always an artistic expression. I felt it as something. It was just, you know, you put some, like you were building a sculpture, and I was like, I could work these out and train these, and I could build this and this, and for me,
Yeah.
it was just an aesthetic expression. Um, and then on the same time, working on my own consciousness. I had no idea about any of this stuff before. It was like, you know, I went from, you know, neuro linguistic programming from Richard Bandler, John Grinder, and Tony Robbins to like, you know, God in multiple
Yeah.
incarnations.
So where'd you
And
go first? Like that's very expansive. Like how do you start narrowing down what's appealing and making sense?
well, I went to California, of
Oh,
course. Right
okay.
after
Well,
that, I
here
got
we are.
by, you know, where else are you gonna go, right? You gotta to the land
Okay.
of cosmic creativity. So yeah, literally, I tried to integrate it. School didn't work out for me at that point. I was like, this is kindergarten. And then I worked around, and then in the fall of that year, decided to take my first plane trip. Went out to the West Coast, took a train down to California, and wanted to still become a bodybuilding champion and all that stuff. And met Joe Gold, and Joe told me, hey, look, kid, where you got any money? And I'm like, no. You got any family here? I'm like, no. He's got a job? And I'm like, no. He's like, dude, this town's gonna eat you up. You need to get your stuff together. You need to get some money. You need to get your life together.
Right.
You don't have to be here to train. So I was like, okay, this guy knows he's talking about. He built Gold's Gym, built World Gym, built all this stuff, trained Arnold. Like, he's probably giving me some good advice.
Yeah.
So I went back to the West Coast and started my career in fitness. And you know, it was all kinds of ups and downs over that, but worked at every angle until eventually I ended up starting and operating my own company.
So how did you decide you needed to dedicate your attention towards the supplementation? I
Yeah.
know how I feel about supplementation, but what was it for you that
Yeah. So I think going back, I was reading magazines and bodybuilding stuff and all that sort of stuff. And of course, there's all sorts of supplements, and the quality wasn't that great. But I remember when um, EOS came out, EOS was a company by Bill Phillips. I don't know if people might remember the body transformation, the 12-week stuff. Body for Life was his big course. But prior to that, he ran a company called, he started it from there. It was EOS. And inside of that, he actually was the guy that made the first creatine commercially available. So he took Ed Bird's product creatine and put that out in the market. And he put a couple other things out in the market that actually you could get a physiological response from. And it was really the first supplements ever that you would take them and you would actually notice something happening. And so that was revolutionary to me. And I began working in a nutrition store and learning about this stuff and using those. And then eventually I'd done a circuitous route and came back and won a national champion, or went to my first nationals, didn't win, but did contract a contract to go back out to the West Coast again, which I did. Opened up my own store and had my own personal training thing and started making my first amount of money through lots of struggle and stuff. I got sidetracked for a bit, as I tend
What
to
was
be.
that?
I got caught up in sex, drugs, and rock and roll, like kind of party lifestyle. You know,
You're in that age group.
yeah, your late 20s and whatever. And it was, discovered all that sort of stuff and had a lot of fun until it ended up really, really bad. And as it tends to, your acceptable parameters start out here and you're kind of living this life. And then it starts to morph as you enter into those crowds and those cultures and those things. And again, it was exploring my frustration with government systems and economic systems again. So I hadn't resolved those issues of resentment that I had towards authoritarian control. Yeah. And so I was expressing it. Plus I was recovering from my first change in my bodybuilding career, I think, at that time. So there was a combination of grieving a certain loss in combination with the resentment towards authority expressed out in this wild nature. Unfortunately, I got out of it with my life. That was a close call. But anyways, once that happened, that's when I came back to my first love, which was bodybuilding, and went into drug tested competitions. They had just started at that time. And I said, hey, here's a way I can stay clean. Here's the way I can stay on that sort of stuff. And I did those programs. And I also at that time got into Eastern philosophy. So I started meditating and, achieving different states. I kind of got a rapid ride into the meditation world. I had the first 6 months, I would say it's like rainbows and unicorns. It was a rocket ride in what happened to me.
Well, and you had the acid experience, so you kind of had to roll with that thought process. So it makes sense that you jumped in right there.
Yeah. And then I had a couple other things that happened that kind of blew my brains open and really divine experiences. So I've been very lucky that way from that part, because a lot of people are acting on pure faith and don't know that these things happen, but they actually do. And so I had a series of synchronicities that were quite remarkable. And so I stayed on this program. I went through lots of challenges during this time, but I had this kind of foundational rock of spirituality, that there was a pursuit greater than what was happening in my life at the time. And I just kept winning. And then within 2 years later, from almost losing my life from the drug world again, don't learn the first time, got to try a couple times. I was standing on stage at the Mr. Universe contest in India from my spiritual teacher. And I was going to be a monk at the time. I had given up all my possessions when I went to the Mr. Universe. I'd been in ashram that year and surrendered to that path, and then met with the head monk of the ashram I was going to. And after all that was done, he sat down with me and he said, "No, you're going to come back to India many times. Your pathway is meant to the world. So,
No, but what I hear is being said is that you're meant to take your whole experience and share it with others. You're not meant to stay in India. That's what I hear.
Correct. Yeah.
To do.
Yeah. So since that time, and then I came back and everything came back, and then Matt and I started the company and brought that message and trained all these people around the world, and that evolved into our digestive health company. So we've been around for 16 years in that online business. I mean, I'm one of the only guys that had an online business and didn't own a computer at the time.
How'd you do that?
Well, Matt was the online genius and I was the bodybuilding star. So he said, we can make money selling courses and education of a vegetarian world champion kind of athlete. I'm like, you're not making money online, are you? And he's like, yeah, I am. I'm like, come on, man. Nobody's making money online. And he's like, I said, I don't even own a computer. I was going to literally the internet cafes to write my my programs for people.
Yeah.
And he's like, you don't have a computer? So he didn't believe I didn't have a computer. I didn't believe that he was making money online. So we started a company on an online business, and I wrote the book. He did the marketing, and it took off like a wild sensation. And we've been on that rocket ride ever since.
So what supplements did you guys decide to make first, and why?
Well, first we started out as an education company primarily. Mm-hmm. Our roots have always been that way. And we're really highly focused on providing people the proper education. Our first product was a digestive enzyme product, because after the Mr. Universe contest, a lot of people don't know that I gained 42 pounds of fat and water in 11 weeks. So I went from Mr. Universe to Mr. Marshmallow. And basically, long story short, is I met a doctor at the same time, serendipity again, same time. And he was just like senior citizen. He was in his 70s, and he was like vibrant skin, and he looked right through, and he was so energetic. And I was like, dude, this guy could just wipe me out. I just destroyed myself with this pursuit of cosmetic ideology. And like, what do you know? And he said something to me really great. He said, Wade, you've learned to build the body from the outside in, not the inside out. I was like, oh, you're so right. And so he put me on a program of enzymes and probiotics and, you know, raw foods and all these sort of stuff. And so in 6 months, I recaptured my physique, but I felt better than I ever had. And then we started that company. And so our first product was an enzyme, which this one here today, Masszymes.
Yep.
Which this is the third incarnation of Masszymes. So we've
has it changed much?
We've altered it a bit. It's probably 40% better than the original version, I would say. Somewhere 30 to 40% is behind the original
I just
version.
know when I give them to people when they're in pain, they're like, this is amazing. I'm all, told you.
Yeah.
Every time. Nobody ever complains. They're always so thankful for it.
Yeah. So we started that, and then we did our P3O probiotic, and then we started from there. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's been kind of crazy, you know?
I love it. Okay. So last year at the biohacking convention, you had whoever was working at your booth.
Yeah. I couldn't get there because you were at the Bulletproof?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I was supposed to be there, but I was going through this E2 visa because I'm a Canadian by nature, and I got blocked. I was actually at the border under interrogation for 8.5 hours because I lived all over the world for the last 10 years and had all these companies, and I was going in there and I hadn't got my visa yet, but I was just kind of going down and so I got 50 million questions and everything blew up, and I wasn't able to go there that year because I love that conference. Got it.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened.
Well, the people at your booth nicely told me the way you use the probiotics. They said, well, you can use it this way. And I hadn't heard of this yet, because now, after using them for a year and a half now, I've learned to use them a little bit more if I feel like my immune system could be compromised. So right now, with everything that's going on, everything you guys have created is so important, having to do with stress, with the gut, with the digestion, and they all just work together so nicely. So now we're going to dive into that. You ready?
Sure. We can go anywhere you like.
Well, I just love hearing about all of it because it makes sense to me how the stress is affecting our digestion, but then how do we use the enzymes, and then how are we using the probiotics? I've been using them for a while, so it makes sense to me, but I would love for you to share more because I'm here to learn. So.
Okay, great. Well, the foundation for most people who haven't got this, there's a couple assumptions that people make. You put food in your mouth, that it automatically goes into your body. And there's a distinct process. And that process is pretty profound in the fact that you've got about 5 stages in layman's terms of what happens when you actually eat food. So you taste, test, smell food, and that activates sensory responses, nervous system, salivary response. Like if I say dill pickles, there's all people will start to sour or whatever, right? So just the suggestion of that starts to prep the mind and the body. And that's why advertising is so intense on people and makes them have cravings or embedding associative feelings and high emotions and sports and all that sort of stuff. So we can get into that. But there's a connection of taste, touch, feel to food. And then you go in, you masticate it and you chew it. And then it goes down the esophagus. As it enters into the upper cardiac portion of the stomach. The stomach's kind of in 2 different components. That's where the enzymes present in the food are supposed to break it down. Now, humans are the only people that eat enzymatic deficient diets, right? Every animal, if it's a cow, it eats grass. It's got the enzymes and sprouts and probiotics that are involved in it. If you're a tiger and you're eating zebras, they eat the entrails where the enzymes and probiotics are, and then they eat the carcass. If it's a bear that eats a salmon, it eats it raw, same thing. And if it eats berries, it eats the same thing. So all animals eat, and enzymes are responsible for thinking and to blinking. Every chemical process in your body, 25,000 plus, they're discovering new enzymes every single day, are these catalysts, these cofactors that accelerate chemical processes inside your body, including digestion. They're essential for it. And so if you don't have those, your body has to take your life force, your energetic resources, your smooth muscle tissue, your striated muscle tissue, convert those proteins into enzymes that have a huge metabolic cost in order to digest your food. That's why you feel tired after turkey dinner. It's not the tryptophan. It's you've eaten too much food. You got to shunt all the blood. Hey, shut the brain off, shut whatever. You know, grandma, you just lie on the couch in the rocking chair drooling. Uncle Ted is on the floor with Drew coming down his face, right? You know what I mean? Like everybody's been there, right? They've seen that, right? Everybody's like making the sprint for the living room floor after the third plate or after grandma's apple pie. And so that's because of an enzymatic deficiency. So there was a guy by the name of Dr. Edward Howe who put forth, hey, guess what? You know what? We have this whole enzyme bank account, and he did all these experiments. And so in his books, Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity, he demonstrated animals who were fed enzymatically deficient diets did not live as long as animals fed enzymatically rich foods, and they didn't live as long as animals who had enzymes in addition to. So I was like, oh, I want to live a long time. I need more enzymes. But then it turned out that there was all sorts of recovery and physiological benefits of taking in exogenous enzymes in a supplemental form. And so we developed a company to do that. So anyways, the next stage of digestion is where hydrochloric acid comes in. Now, this is a big part of the immune system because hydrochloric acid has two components. Number one, it changes the pH of that mixture into a highly acidic place. And as it changes, it'll activate some enzymes and deactivate others. But the other thing that the hydrochloric acid does, it donates ions to destroy pathogens. So it kills, bacteria and parasites and destroys viruses. It does all these things that it does, the hydrochloric acid. And the average 40-year-old has less than 30% of their enzymes and less than 30% of their hydrochloric acid. So that process doesn't work. And how you can test if you don't have enough hydrochloric acid is you just take a quarter of a teaspoon of baking soda, throw it in 6 ounces of water, mix it up, drink it. If you burp in the first 5 minutes, you're good. If you don't burp in the first 5 minutes, you don't have enough hydrochloric acid. Easy test, right? And then after that mixture of food exits the stomach, adds minerals to it, goes into the intestinal tract. And in the intestinal tract, you have what's called your probiotics, or you also have, I call it all kinds of bacteria, good, bad, and ugly. We're always thought as bacteria is bad, but there's good bacteria. In fact, we have a symbiotic relationship with bacteria. Without them, we'd be dead. Okay. And these are the guys that actually take and convert what we digested in pre-digestion into the final stage of either turning that into energy units or into building blocks. That's all our food gets converted to, and then the rest is eliminated through peristaltic contraction, which is the waste. Now, here's the thing. With the probiotics, you got 10% good, 10% bad, 80% opportunist. Based on your diet, based on your lifestyle, based on drug use, based on chemicals, based on antibiotics, based on stress and anxiety and all that sort of stuff, that will change these colonies, or your microbiome is the fancy name for it. Mm-hmm. And that is a key component to our health, because these cultures actually interact with their nervous system. They can make us happy. 95% of our neurotransmitters are there. A lot of people that have trouble, in self-love or low moods or inability to self-regulate or stressed out, all this stuff is actually because of the chemicals that are produced or the neurotransmitters that aren't being produced relative to their diet or the presence of these essential bacteria cultures, which work together with us in order to have life. In fact, there's somewhere between 5 and 10 times the amount of bacteria in our body than we have cells. Okay. So yes, they're very, very, very important. And so we as a company started working on how do we improve people's gut health to improve their cognitive health, which will improve their physical health, which will bolster their immune system, which will allow them to produce and develop and to share their unique gifts in the world.
Yes. Okay. So I have like a bazillion questions. So when you're talking about the hydrochloric acid, is that what you said?
Yes.
So you guys created HCl.
Correct.
And that is to help with that process, right?
Yep. Yep. Betaine HCl. So it's derived from plants, and then we combine it with some enzymes and some minerals. So we've got enzymes in it, we've got hydrochloric acid, and we've got the minerals to buffer the acids when it comes out of the intestinal tract. So each one of our products that we developed at BiOptimizers, we developed so that it works independently very well, but also connects synergistically with the whole digestive health suite.
Mm-hmm. So is there any that you can't take together, or do you have to space them apart? So I take the
Biotics.
Yes, just got those the other day. But then also taking the probiotics. And I know in a talk a few weeks ago, you said take them like a few hours apart. Is that?
Yeah. Good rule of thumb is take the P3OM, the proteolytic probiotic, take that before bed, and take the cognibiotics maybe 30 to 60 minutes before you eat in the morning is probably the best combo.
Okay. And then, so I've been giving my kids those too. I'm super excited.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then the probiotics, can the dogs and cats have those?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Safe? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what's the ratio of body weight for how many capsules should be taken?
Yeah, 1 capsule for every 40 pounds is usually the good. I mean, with enzymes, there's really not a tolerance level, but I always err to the side of caution when you're dealing with little people.
Yeah.
And animals seem to respond even better. They're like real enzyme, some dog food. Little Ralphie's he's gonna have a good day. He's gonna be wound up and wired. So
yeah. My little dog, he goes bananas when I give him that. He loves
it.
it.
No, it's amazing, right? They did this like somebody switched him into turbo.
Yeah, it's nice.
Really great for old dogs, like old dogs and old cats. You break those capsules, sprinkle it on their food, and watch them eat it, and it's just like it just got perked up. Yes. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. Okay, so then as far as how people can use the probiotics, I mean, I'll break mine open sometimes. Or the enzymes.
You can eat them. You can eat them. You can chew them up. I like to chew them. I'll bite into them. I'm kind of weird. I like the flavor of it.
Okay. So I have to ask about that, because if part of the digestive process happens with thinking about eating the food and we start salivating, how does that work with the digesting of any of the supplements, to your point with chewing them up just now?
Yeah, good. The easiest thing is the capsule that we encapsulate them with is a plant-based. It's a cellulose based capsule that dissolves pretty rapidly when put with water, let alone the acidic conditions inside your stomach that activate pretty quick. So it breaks open and is active right away. But I do like chewing on them as a process, because then a lot of the presence of enzymes, or sprinkle it on your food. But if you sprinkle like masszymes on oatmeal, for example, it's going to be liquid in 2 minutes. So you don't want to necessarily,
because it starts breaking it down.
Oatmeal soup. Yeah, it just breaks it down right there. Or you put it in your protein drink, it'll pre-digest the protein, and you can taste the difference, and the consistency will become very slippery and very viscous.
Is there any benefit to that?
There is, because you're getting pre-digested amino acids that way. So a lot of people will sip that for extended long workouts if you want to.
Okay, so I have a question okay, so I'm allergic to oats. So if I eat oats, then I'm going to have my food sensitivities. So if I was to have it with enzymes poured over it, would that partially break it down?
Yeah, you could use the masszymes or even Gluten Guardian, which if it's a gluten response, oftentimes. So that has an enzyme called DPP4, and that's the only enzyme known to break down gluten. So we use that primarily as a defense mechanism for people who are going to restaurants or social occasions and they're highly sensitive to gluten. They can take take 3, 4, 5 capsules before they get there. That way, if they inadvertently, because gluten's in everything, I mean, it's just crazy, trying to track that down. And some people really suffer from that. They'll alleviate those conditions.
Yeah. So is there anything that you will avoid eating, or do you know that you just have like superpowers in all the products you guys have created?
Yeah, well, no, obviously I don't eat flesh. But,
I know, right?
Yeah, but that's a personal choice. I'm not one of these like vigilante vegans or anything like that. I kind of think.
Well, are you vegan or are you vegetarian?
I'm neither. I'm me.
Okay. You just eat. I'm not trying to put you in a box. You're just eating.
No, I know, but everyday life loves like You know, I remember for years I did 2 years raw, and then you go to the raw festival and everybody come out there and they're like, what percentage of raw are you? You know, it's like, are you one of the pure ones or whatever? I just say that I don't typically, if I came to a point in my life where, you know, the genetic and epigenetic factors that we monitor on me said that you need to do this, well, then I would make those adjustments. But fortunately, that's not the case. Matt, he's practically a carnivore. He's keto 25
Yeah,
years.
I've seen his posts. But so, okay, so then how do you, okay, so then the enzymes are helpful for those who are eating meat or not eating meat. And a big thing that comes to me is when you guys talk about it, the capsule can break down the meat in a jar. Like,
yeah, if you go on our website, people can look on it, and we actually show the enzymes and the probiotics breaking down and eating a steak right in the cup until it takes a steak and reduces it just to amino acid powder.
Okay.
So and we wanted to do that because, you know, people go, well, does this work? How does it work? You know, it's like, well, here we do. Here's what happens. This is what's going on. End of story.
Yeah,
and
you can't fight that.
yeah. And then when people try our stuff, it's like, well, here, look, if you don't like it, we'll give you your money back. Okay. Like, try a bottle. If it's not quite what it is, you just get your money back. No muss, no fuss, no big deal. Because I never want to make a profit from something that didn't work. Somebody is taking the risk with their hard-earned money to try this product. Maybe it's for them, maybe it isn't. Most times it is.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to take that risk. Going back to what we talked about first, is that I'm not here to make a profit. I'm here to make a difference. And in order to do that, there's a certain amount of profit that needs to be made and redeployed. Right. A lot of people don't know, and because we kind of talked about that earlier, like Matt and I, we didn't even pay ourselves for 10 years. We just stayed on the mission and just kept hiring people. Yeah. You know, because for us, the mission was more important than anything else. We were both personal trainers. We both got that jazz of making a difference in somebody's life. And we said, look, can we build a different kind of company? Can we build a company on these foundational principles that, you know, people say, come on, man, you can't build a company like that. That's not the way you build a company. You got to be about profit, and it got to be about margins, and you got to be about, you know, being heard and all that sort of stuff.
No, it's about the greater good. You're serving the greater good to help people.
Now that doesn't mean that we didn't go through the long, dark winters and have all the challenges that we have. And I'm not necessarily, I don't recommend that people don't pay themselves. I really don't. We had external sources of income that was able to support us through that. And you do have to make a certain amount of profit in order to provide enough safety and security, as people are finding out right now with all the companies closing down and the economic havoc that's playing on the world, and will continue to do so for a long period of time, probably. Bottom line is you do have to be have sound economics in any business endeavor that you're doing.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to jump into the next question. It has to do with the proteins that are being broken down by the enzymes and the probiotics. I was wondering about plant proteins as well. Is it helpful in that? Because
it's really important. It's really important because plants develop proteins as a way of protecting themselves.
Yes, you're going there. Okay, go.
So, you know, the protein found in plants are amino acid structures that prevent the other animals from eating them and consuming them and stuff like that. So ideally, you will eat plants that are supportive of your particular background. Unfortunately, what's happened in the world today is a lot of the plants that we have cultivated and developed are going through monoculture. They've been sprayed with herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides, which, interesting enough, interrupt enzymatic activity in the bugs and kills them. So how much of those do you have to eat before it kills you? Right. Then on top of that, we've got preservatives, we got dyes, and the monoculturing, we've done genetic engineering oftentimes, so it's not much recognizable by the body. Plus, we've grown on mineral deficient soils, which suck the protein out of all of the plants, and therefore all that's left is kind of empty carbohydrate. So wheat at the turn of the century was 90% protein. Now it's less than 7%. Because of the degradation of soil, because of the use of monoculturing, because of the added chemicals and agents and weaker strains breaking down where they give up their protein, turn to amino acids to convert the enzymes to grow the plant on the mineral deficient soils, because you need enzymes to get your protein, protein to get your minerals, minerals to get your vitamins. That's the chain in the evolutionary component of all living organisms. And so that process has been largely disrupted by the mechanisms of industrialized food production and distribution, which solved the calorie model. Starvation was a big issue, but it brought forth these other challenges that we are now dealing with. And primarily they've been dealt with by the addition of all sorts of chemicals with, at the time, probably unknown or unresearched side effects. But now that's been going on for 3 generations. And going back to our favorite founding pioneer in the enzyme world, Dr. Edward Howe, he suggested 60, 70 years ago that by our generations now, he broke this out with animals in that book, Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity. When they got to 3rd generation of enzymatically deficient diets, the animals lost the ability to procreate, had a rapid rise in genetic diseases, and elicited strange social behavior. Well, gee, and he predicted the same thing would happen to humans. And right now we have a spike in genetic-based diseases that are not commensurate with normal genetic evolution.
Right.
We have, clinics for, fertility springing up everywhere. And all you need to do is go on Facebook and you're going to see some strange sociological behavior. So, isn't that interesting? And so we're messages to kind of reverse that trend and to help people that are listening, and obviously listening to the show, they're obviously searching. They obviously know that something's not right in the world. They're not feeling right. They don't feel the vibrance. There's an intuitive knowledge that we all have access to. And oftentimes it's more prevalent in women than men, I think, because it's culturally cultured, and men are taught very young to shut that shit down.
We're just surviving the species in 2 different ways. That's all. Male versus female. So
yeah. And I think I think in the totally evolved human, then those physical characteristics or natural tendencies kind of merge in anyways. And so there's and especially particularly in the principal component of a marriage union, it is the recognition of the polarity of masculine and feminine, the yin and the yang, which if you look, there's a dot, there's one inside the other in this infinite pattern, and it becomes this dance which creates the Wu Wei, the Tao, the energetic component. And so one can see the reflection of themselves within the other person. And then of course the production of that is children, which is a miracle all in itself. And so when you get out of that, that's not necessarily it's not necessary to have in order to become aware of that possibility. I think it's one of the pathways, and probably one of the easiest ones, regardless of your consciousness level. Like I always say, any 2 idiots can have a kid. It takes a really special person to be able to raise one.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely. So that's a whole other bottom. No problem, have one. Try and deal with it the next 20, 30 years, right?
It's a big task. And I'll say, with having kids, there's nothing like getting to know yourself through watching yourself parent. And learning that, and learning compassion for the humans you created. I'm just a vessel. They're not mine, like my children. I'm just the vessel that brought them into the world. But to look at every human and just go, oh my gosh, I get to have compassion for me. I get to have compassion for my children. And I think that's the biggest thing with me doing this summit is self-love comes in so many different ways. And it's not just about identifying self-love and saying, do I have self-love? But it comes down to every bit and piece to your journey. You accepted the invitation and you're like, gosh, I fell flat. And look, I just overdosed. And look, I got this award. And then I got this. And that's how all of our journeys are. And I love that you pointed out the yin and yang, the Shiva Shakti, the non-dualistic way of living. Like, you can't learn and grow without the conflict. There will be resolution. And that's what you're showing. And that's what I'm seeing when I'm talking with my kids, and everything that you just talked about with being a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old boy. My son's 14, my daughter's 19. And I'm looking at everything you just talked about going, yeah, this too is coming about, and looking at the procreation and everything you guys are working on. I have so much faith and confidence in, and I'm so glad that you got to talk with us about self-love, because everything you guys are providing, and the candor and the realness of what your journey's been like, you guys are holding space for so many people. and teaching out of the place of this is what I did and this is how I grew. And I really appreciate that you guys are sharing. So thank you.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it's a real pleasure. We're honored to be anywhere that someone wants to listen for 5 minutes and maybe get a little tinkle of, hey, maybe I
Let's
could do
hope they
this.
listen for more than 5 minutes. This has been good. Do you feel like
Yeah.
there's anything else weighing on you that life would like you to tell us?
Well, yeah, I think right now there's a lot of people dealing with challenges, and anytime that things don't go the way that you planned, or these life things that are outside of your control and power, it will always start to expose the aspects of our own awareness, our own consciousness, our own being, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, whether those things are going to come up in that moment. And oftentimes we mask them with our career, we mask them with drugs or alcohol, or we mask them with distraction and TV or whatever hobbies that we're doing. And now that we've had this opportunity to shut down and go within, there is an opportunity within the chaos. And so how do I develop and cultivate order out of the chaos? How do I see this as not happening to me, but happening for me? And by taking action, again, just like I was when I was 15 years old, there was all these circumstances that I could not control, didn't have the power, felt like a victim, hated it, was angry, frustrated, upset. And there's probably people listening to this that are that right now, and I get it. But what I can say is, if you can flip that and say, okay, this sucks, it's not what I planned, but maybe it's bringing an opportunity to go in a different direction. Maybe that I'm tired of going down the direction that I got lumped into and felt that was the way things are being. Maybe this is the great boot in the pants to get me going in another direction, because almost every single time in my life where something went horribly wrong, death of a loved one, loss of a business, economic collapse, falling to the throes of drug abuse, personal relationship meltdowns. Every one of those, when I look back, were the signposts that cultivate me to refine or to take a different direction in my life, that led me to in a place that I couldn't have anticipated or intuited on my own. So there is some infinite guiding universal principle, universal force, some divine essence that's running the whole show. And if you want evidence of it, go look at a flower. Go look up into the night sky at the light that's coming to you from millions of light years away. Watch the moon run, the sun rise. Get out in nature. See water running through the brook. Pay attention to the things that children are in wonder about, and recapture your wonder and go, wait a second. This whole trip's been going on for trillions of years or whatever. Like, the sun's going around, the earth's spinning, people come, people go, people live, people die. There's all sorts of things. The fish are fishing and swimming, the birds are flying, the animals are running, the factories are burning, and the government is doing this. And like, it looks kind of chaotic, but if you can zoom out far enough, it's all kind of working.
It is.
So the machine is working, and we don't need to run it.
Right.
We don't need to run the machine. We just need to not get ground up in the cogs of the machine. So when it starts to grind you up, you got to pull out, you got to step back and go, okay, let's go where the flow is taking me. Let's invite divinity to say, hey, ask, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to be? What is this thing? And surrender is not a passive movement. It's surrender the idea of how I think things need to be, and allow for what needs to come forth. And when it comes forth, you get this hit, and you get this drive, and you get this motivation, and it's activated, and it's driving, it's fulfilling, and you go, and life becomes a magical ride.
It is magical. It's so magical.
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was awesome. All right. Well, I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the Established Self-Love Summit. And this is Wade Lightheart, and we will have in the show notes a lot of information about the products and books and programs that they offer through BiOptimizers. Thank you.